All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Christy Pancratz, and I'm the director of Safe Streets. Thank you for coming to the Safe Streets Coalition and Freedom Now Coalition meeting. For those of you who this is your first meeting, thank you for being here, and we hope you continue to come. What our purpose is, Safe Streets' purpose is to educate people on crime prevention. And one of the things that we saw was with human trafficking, there needs to be a lot done as far as neighborhood mobilization. And we thought, what better tie-in than to partner with Freedom Now in this important initiative on addressing human trafficking. So that's a little bit of background on how we came to be. For the first part of the meeting, we will go ahead and go through some of the Safe Streets business information, and then we have a speaker, the latter part, which will be a great opportunity for people to stay and hear a little bit about what's going on in the human trafficking side of things. But first, I would like to invite Cindy Patton to come forward. One of the things that we believe in doing is recognizing good in the community. We talk about a lot of the bad, but it's also important to recognize all of the good things going on. So Cindy, here you go.
Thanks. I'd like to call Nicholas Hill forward. And I don't see the sheriff or anybody else here, so. Oh, okay. Come on up. Yeah. We got representatives from the sheriff and the sheriff's office here. I'd like to recognize Nicholas Hill as part of the Kansas Character Recognition Council of Topeka and Shawnee County. As the strength of our nation is dependent upon the health and safety of its communities, the strength of our community is dependent upon the character of its citizens. Topeka City of Character and Safe Streets Coalition of Topeka and Shawnee County recognize Nicholas Hill. On January 23rd, 2019, around 7 p.m., Nicholas Hill, a third shift supervisor in Shawnee County Dispatch, called in that he heard over the radio that a Shawnee County citizen had run out of gas and was blocking the roadway. A Shawnee County deputy standing by for traffic control was notified, and the citizen's request for a tow that it was going to cost him $60. The civilian was unable to contact family or friends for assistance. Nicholas Hill was at home and arrived a short time later with gasoline. The civilian wanted to repay him, but Nicholas declined the offer. He showed empathy and compassion towards a fellow citizen in time of need. Demonstrating benevolence, generosity, and initiative makes Nicholas Hill a champion of character. Congratulations. Anything you want to say, Nicholas?
I guess I'd say thank you, and just kind of as an example for everybody to take a few minutes and help out your fellow neighbor, traveler, whatever. Yeah, just a few minutes goes a long way in helping someone else.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Be sure and get your nominations for Champions of Character to Safe Streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. All right, a little bit of housekeeping. The March minutes are on your table and they were sent out earlier. Do I hear a motion to approve those? All right, is there a second? Awesome, thank you. Now on to the Safe Streets staff update. It is on the back side of your agenda. As you can see, there have been a lot of activities going on, ranging from neighborhood watches to school presentations, and just wanted to let you know that we're always available for different types of initiatives like that. Coming up this Saturday, we actually have a great event that we're doing in partnership with Boys and Girls Club. It's called The Impact. And basically, Seaman High School improv actors are going to be playing out a scenario regarding the ramifications of drug use. And then we're going to be having a panel discussion with a representative from the Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Vest, Lieutenant Steve Roth, who's over there, as well as an addictions counselor and Dawn with Boys and Girls Club. Really, this is a family event, so really encourage you. If you've got kids between the ages of 10 and 18, this is perfect opportunity to bring them, to have that discussion and start the conversation about what your expectations are regarding substance use. We also have the first planning meeting for National Night Out coming up shortly. How many of you have attended one of those meetings before? Okay. Yeah, all the law enforcement's hands go up there. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I really encourage you. Last year, we had about 87 neighborhoods throughout Shawnee County who participated in this event, which is basically having a big old block party on August 10th to get to know your neighbors. Because the idea is that once you know your neighbor, you're more invested in it. You're more likely to report crime, thus reducing crime. So this is such an important event that I encourage you, come to the meeting, check it out. No one's gonna talk you into signing up, I promise. But really encourage you to check it out. We also have a couple of trainings that are coming up, Drug Trends and Addiction A to Z. These are eligible for continuing ed credit, so they are taught by some of our great staff. All right, now comes one of the things that's a little bit harder for me to say. About 6 years ago, I started with Safe Streets as their director, and it has been a great, great time. Safe Streets is more than a name, and even though it's had some incredible people, Reverend Dave Fulton, the late Sally Zellers, what I've learned over those last 6 years is that Safe Streets is this. Safe Streets is all of us. And that's what makes me a little bit sad to announce that I've accepted another job, and I will be moving on, but I really hope that this group continues in the capacity it is, and that each of you takes away knowing that there's something you can do to impact our community for the better. So with that, Michelle, would you like to come forward?
Well, this is a sad bit of news that we've learned last week, and on behalf of both all the staff at PARS and the Board of Directors, I just want to say you have made Safe Streets, and you have upped the ante, and it's become even more known in this community as a result of your efforts. And I would like everyone to at least recognize, I would like to see a round of applause for all the work that Christy has done. And I'd like to invite all of you next Wednesday at the PARS office at 2209 Southwest 29th. Between 4 and 6, we're going to have a reception, and we'd like all of you that can come and invite your friends and neighbors. And the other thing I wanted to say, there weren't many people that said they had gone to a National Night Out meeting. So I'd like to say, if you haven't had a National Night event in your neighborhood, contact Judy Wilson at the back of the room, and she will give you all the scoop on how easy it is to be engaged in that, and we'd like to hit 100 neighborhoods next year. So again, Christy, thank you for all that you've done, and you will be missed. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you all very much. On to our partner updates. Sergeant Dan Wilson, come on forward. He likes applause as he walks that long walk, guys.
Who's got the computer? Oh, okay. We have some slides over here to show you, just to reiterate how important we think National Night Out is. That's the first slide. Come to the meeting if you haven't been. If your neighborhood's already involved, it's a great event, a good way to meet your neighbors and meet a lot of us and just help out with the cause of why we're all here. Another event we just did was the State Special Olympics basketball tournament. It was held here in Topeka. Just gonna wait. If you haven't been involved in Special Olympics, law enforcement's a good partner with them. It's a wonderful organization, something we really enjoy. And it's getting to be that time of year again. We always remind you, lock it, remove it, or lose it. Like I said, over the last 2 weeks, our car burglars have started back in business. So remember, no guns in your cars, no keys, don't leave your extra keys in there, no purses, anything like that. So help us out and help yourself out and don't be a victim. So Thank you. Oh, I got Lieutenant Roth's going to come up here for a minute. Let's talk about you.
Hi. I just wanted to state that the chief is very sorry he couldn't be here this morning. He had another event that he had to go to, but he did ask me to pass on. Christy, thank you for all that you have done. We've known you for many years from your time at the police department and then with Safe Streets. So this young lady has been a wonderful asset to the community, as you all know. So on behalf of the Topeka Police Department, we want to say thank you for everything that you have done.
All right, and many of you may have heard that Sheriff Herman Jones, former Sheriff Herman Jones, accepted a position with the Kansas Highway Patrol, effective today. So in his first public appearance as assuming the duties of sheriff is Under Sheriff Phil Bloom.
Thank you, Christy. I appreciate that. I'm going to cover a few points that I was told I had to talk about by Sergeant Stahlbomber, so I have to take direction as well. And I'll cover that, and I'll get a couple of things as well. I might indulge you a little bit. I might take a little bit more time. I hope that's not a problem, but I won't stay up here too long. First, I'll address it. Sergeant Wilson, the best thing about him is he's got a really great neighbor, a super neighbor. That'd be me, so thank you. For our agency, I'm going to give you a quick update. We have just hired 2 officers this week, coupled with two weeks ago. That brings our numbers to about 114. That's the highest we've had at the sheriff's office going back to about 2011. And that is significant for us, and it's significant, I think, for all involved. But understanding we have positions available, but our policy has always been we don't fill positions just to fill them. We try to bring in quality and skilled people, so we've kept positions open. So that we're at this level is pretty phenomenal. So we're moving in the right direction. I know the Topeka Police Department, same thing. The quality of applicants and the skilled people are coming through. We're ascending. We're getting some really good people in both organizations. So that's a good thing for our entire community. So a wonderful thing. We like to hear that. On a sad note or a bad note that we have to address it, we're getting hit with burglars again, and then our agency was hit overnight in Silver Lake and Montara. Warmer weather, it's the cycle, it happens. It's again, we say the message over and over, remove items, lock your vehicles, or you're going to lose it. And it's again, that's the partnership we have to have. It's a message we have to keep reinforcing. Got to take things out of the vehicles, especially firearms. That's still the big issue. That's still something we face, and it's very harmful in our community. So we got to keep reinforcing that message. Another one that's very disappointing that continues to cycle in every single year are the scams, and we're getting hit with the IRS scams at this time of the year. Warrant scams. People, we do not call and solicit money over the phone lines or demanding payment for warrants. If anybody has concern about a phone call they got, that some action, somebody representing themselves from the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office, please get that information, hang up, and then call our agency directly. We can clarify that very quickly. Sadly, one of the scams that happens is we have all our information out on our website, our phone numbers, and our names and email addresses, and we have people that will use those. Captain Akery is with me today, and when we get those calls, he takes great pleasure in call those individuals back and continues to, maybe I shouldn't say this, he'll harass them until they'll actually shut down their phone lines, and unfortunately they'll go in that direction. But we try to investigate as best we can. But again, if you have questions or concerns about it, please call us back, check with the agency itself, and we'll clarify that. Now some positive notes. We're getting ready to start our youth camps. We have Seaman, Shawnee Heights, and Washburn Rural, and we're taking enrollments, and our information's on our website. I believe our first camp will be Shawnee Heights at June 10th through the 14th. It'll be, and then Washburn Rural, June 17th through the 21st, and I apologize, I don't have the dates for the Seaman. Usually, I apologize, Seaman's usually our first camp. But our information's on our website. If you know people in that age range, we spend a week with them and do a variety of things with the kids. So it's a wonderful program, and we try to get as many as we can, and we usually get them filled up pretty quickly. Kind of a final note on our agency information is this past Wednesday we concluded our Citizens Academy, and I believe that was our, which one, Todd? Would that have been our, 14th Citizens Academy. 10 weeks that citizens go through the process of spending 2 hours every Wednesday night with us, and we give exposure to our agency in that, and we conclude with kind of a celebration dinner with them at our training complex. And it's been a fantastic partnership with the community. It's something we'll continue doing. Again, I know the Topeka Police Department does the same thing, and typically we usually get participants that will be in both programs. So it's a wonderful program. We usually start that at the first of the year. Our notice for the next academy will go out the end of 2019, but it's a wonderful opportunity to get some exposure into law enforcement partnerships. And it means a lot to us that we get to tell a little bit about what we do. So if anybody has interest, please look into that as well. Let me clarify a little bit the situation with the Sheriff's Office so everybody understands. So that's the big thing. As I believe everyone has to know, that Herman Jones has officially resigned his position as Sheriff of Shawnee County, and as of today, he's assumed the duties of Superintendent of the Kansas Highway Patrol. What that does for our agency is that, as in the interim, I will assume the duties of the sheriff until such time that the governor makes an appointment. There's a series of processes that go through that there will be the caucuses with candidates who are eligible or are interested in applying for the position, and the conference will take place at some point here in the very near future, and that will be open to the public, and people will have a chance to get some insight into the candidates who have interest. I myself have declined interest in the position, and there's reasons why, and I want to clarify that a little bit so there's no misunderstanding. There was something that was published the other day about that I didn't want the position. That's not true. I've had the opportunity to work my entire career in Shawnee County and be in this agency, and I've had the wonderful opportunity and fortune to have achieved virtually every rank in the sheriff's office and working with or in every division. To ultimately maybe finish my career as a sheriff would have been a fabulous honor, but I also knew that to be sheriff, you have to do it for the right reasons. And for my personal gratification, that's not a right reason. You have to do it what's best for the agency and for the people involved. Sheriff Jones was very, very gracious with me. We'd had conversations here in the last probably 4 to 5 weeks about planning my own retirement, and he was working with me on some things, and we were working on plans for succession for the next undersheriff. And so the entire process for him and the Kansas Highway Patrol is a whirlwind, and it hit us both by surprise. So things have changed. I have said publicly, and I will say that I am willing to stay on to help the new sheriff in whatever capacity they would like. It's their prerogative when they come into office. It's an at-will position. They can choose whoever they want. But the agency means that much to me. I'd be more than happy to stay on and provide any assistance I can. Yeah, I'm even willing to set back my retirement time if that new sheriff so desires. But this agency is that important. And the most important thing I want to stress out of that, it's irrelevant who the sheriff is or who the undersheriff is. The men and women of this agency, they're doing their job, and they're performing. They know how to do this job, and they'll continue to do it. We haven't missed a beat, and that's not going to happen. Since 2000, this is the third time we've been through this process, and the men and women of this agency have always stepped up and taken that challenge, and they're not going to let you down. If you still have issues, call us. We're not going away. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, what you have seen from the sheriff's office is not going to change. The performance will still be there. We're dedicated, and that's not going to change. The final thing that I'm going to step away and say is, Christy, you, even before your time here, you've been a great friend to us, and I know you're not going away in the community. You'll be greatly missed, and we very much appreciate everything we've been able to work together and do. And the thing is, you kept it lighthearted, and it's been fun. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Under Sheriff serving as sheriff. One thing before Barry comes up, you'll see yellow sign-in sheets on your table. If you haven't already filled those out, please go ahead and do so. It helps us keep track of who's here and get you on any email lists. But now I'd like to welcome Barry Feaker. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Christy. Any of you who would like to find a chair, if you want to sit up for our presentation, go ahead and come on in while I am doing this introduction. Before that, Christy, thank you for just being so open and such a great person to work with in so many different ways. As we are trying to become a community that's safer and helping us to address this human trafficking concern that we have in our community and beyond. So thank you, Christy. You're going to hear a lot more of that from a lot of people in our community. We're going to miss you. When I was a younger father, I'm still a father. I'm still a younger father. I told my kids, I said, we have a really beautiful world for which you can go into and enjoy the beauty of the world. But just know that there are a lot of landmines out in this world, and if you step on one, you may not recover from it. Today's message is going to be about landmines that our youth need to be aware that are out there in regards to the internet, in regards to how it's connected with human trafficking, and as important, if not more important, for parents and adults and decision makers to know of the dangers of the landmines of what's happening today in regards to social media. I got a chance to meet Russ Tuttle for the first time here a few weeks ago when he was presenting to 350 or 400, maybe more, adults and parents and their youth. And he did a phenomenal job of unpacking today's challenges that we have. If we're going to be successful in combating human trafficking, we need to know about all the nefarious actions and activities and tools that are being used. And today's presentation is going to be a brief laying out of that in the amount of time that we have. Tonight at 5 p.m., Russ is going to be at the Law Enforcement Center to do a longer version. Amber, do we still have more room? It's full. Sorry, too bad. If you are signed up, get there. Amber's going, don't say that. Russ is going to be able to unpack what we saw the other night in a more definitive way, and I think what you're going to hear today, you're going to hear Russ again. So I'm going to let Russ tell a little bit more about himself. Please welcome Russ Tuttle with the Stop Trafficking Project.
Thanks, Barry. So I have an announcement to make. As the president and founder of the Stop Trafficking Project, I am not resigning. Break that theme here. So I hope you realize what you have here in Topeka as a coalition is extremely unique and powerful and influential and effective. So continue in that spirit. It's a really powerful thing. And so this is really different. So quit looking at me. Look over there. Do you notice anything up there that doesn't make sense? So it's not a trick question. So what doesn't make sense is pretend like you're knocking on that guy's door as soon as the train goes by, right? So who looks through a peephole to see who's outside your door when you've got a big glass door right there? Because it's a farm door where everybody's looking. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to help you understand that as an organization that I started called the Stop Trafficking Project, we started it to combat domestic minor sex trafficking specifically. My background is I lived in the country of India, so I'm not an Indian, clearly. Was an expatriate kid, grew up in the country of India, so I understood the issues of human trafficking and what we would call slavery from a third world perspective. And so I, like many Americans, had a concept and understanding that, yes, human trafficking happens in those exotic countries over there, or we understand that it's an issue on the southern border and kids are coming across the border and someone's bringing them in so they can get in as an adult and the kids are disappearing into our society. But for me, it was a journey to understand that this is an issue impacting American kids. And one of the things I desperately need all of us as adults to do is to quit doing this with our very narrow perspective of what we think human trafficking is, what we think sex trafficking is, what we think specifically domestic minor sex trafficking is. Because are any of you going to be so tortured to come back and hear me tonight? One of you, two of you, okay, 3, 4. I'm so sorry. I apologize in advance. So for the rest of you, what you're going to get is just barely dipping my toe in the water, what we're going to cover this evening. But what you will find is that the way we combat domestic minor sex trafficking from a layperson's perspective outside of law enforcement looks nothing like sex trafficking. And it's a paradigm shift we have to understand and realize there's a big window. The other thing I want to communicate is this, is that we've got a lot of kids in the primary areas where their vulnerabilities are being exploited is when they're doing this online, they think they're invincible. Okay, our kids think they're absolutely invincible, and what we're unpacking for them is that there actually are predators who want to harm kids, and that's an adult. As an adult, I've stood in front of over 36,000 students in public schools in the last 2 years and deliver this message and say, listen, this is not live scared. Every adult that's out there does not want to harm you, but there are some. And there's enough of them, and where you're vulnerable, and I step into the holy grail of their lives of social media as an adult. It's a real party, I guarantee you. A whole lot of fun. So this is the big picture. What I want you to understand is the issue that we're grasping. So I want you as adults just to understand, we're going to take like a minute here to unpack socially acceptable addictions, because here's what we do all the time as adults. These kids these days. Kids these days. Okay, well, some of these socially acceptable addictions, they're learning from us. So the whole gaming industry, so the part of the reason why kids are so enamored with the gaming industry is because we as adults have gotten lazy in parenting. So I step on toes. I'm just going to tell you. I apologize in advance. So lazy parenting is just give them a screen. It's a lot harder to make them go outside and play in the swing set and get some sticks and rocks and get creative, or because here's a screen. So there's a word called fantastical. It's an actual word. You can look it up. And the graphics and things in our society today become so fantastical that kids today are bored. So you can take them to the Chinese acrobat, right? And the gal's got her left foot wrapped around her right ear, hanging upside down, and elephant's feeding her grapes, and the kids are like, oh, when's Fortnite coming out? So we have socially acceptable addictions. Our cell phones, we have a love-hate relationship with our cell phones. They go with us everywhere. In the nonprofit world, I'm really grateful for my cell phone. It helps me stay connected. So social media is a thing. Okay, so poor grandma over there, according to her Facebook feed, grandma is the only deer hunter in America who hasn't shot a good buck this season. So here's poor grandma, and she hasn't shot a good buck. And so now she's determined, and so she's sad, and so all these things on social media make a huge impact. Now think that through for our kids. We talk to kids about pornography in public schools because pornography in America has become a socially acceptable addiction. I'm not real popular with most adults and kids for addressing this issue, but we actually view this as the engine that's driving sex trafficking. So just Pornhub, one porn site out of tens of thousands, by their own statistics, last year in 2018, they had 33.5 billion downloads. That's up 5 billion from 2017. So the industry is not shrinking, it's getting bigger. So you may understand that Stormy Daniels was the #1 search that defined 2018 amongst porn users, but #2 was this little game that a lot of boys and girls play called Fortnite. So what do these all have in common? They all have a dopamine release in the brain, and they're all potentially chemically addictive. Now to hop real quick from hanging on to socially acceptable addictions to this thing we call human trafficking. So on a global scale, that slide there would take 9 hours to unpack appropriately, but we know that there's more people in slavery today than at any other time in human history, and we know there's 27 major categories of human trafficking now of slavery. They include things like labor trafficking, organ harvesting, child soldiers, and also includes domestic minor sex trafficking, which is kind of the focus of our organization. All I want you to remember and understand in this concept of combating human trafficking as a whole, but specifically drilling down to domestic minor sex trafficking, it is always about 3 words. And these 3 words have the potential for all of us in our personal lives and in our professional lives to begin to make an impact on this arena. And it's all about the exploitation of vulnerability. That's why combating sex trafficking doesn't look anything like sex trafficking. As an organization, we are committed to being hyper-vigilant way out there on the front end. Why do I go talk to elementary through high school kids in public schools and private schools? Because we as adults understand the vulnerabilities in a kid. Because see, if we will grasp these 3 words, and you really take nothing else out of here today than these 3 words, that's going to give us an area of hope, because the more we address the vulnerability in a student and we say there's a vulnerability in this kid, and the sooner identify that and do something about it before that leads to the next vulnerability, that can lead to the next vulnerability, that can lead to the next vulnerability, that can now potentially lead to a level of exploitation. So Sunday night and Monday, I was in the massive booming metropolises in Kansas called Otis and La Crosse. Know that's at? I didn't know where Otis was. My GPS barely did. La Crosse High School on Monday, combined middle school and high school assemblies with Otis and La Crosse school districts. So as I leave two girls come to me at the end, and they're very concerned because a young girl who was a friend of theirs, two girls came to me, one's 16, one's 17. We've got a friend who's 12, and we're really concerned because at the age of 12, vulnerabilities are being exploited in her life. They thought through social media of a 16-year-old boy, but in reality, we're finding that he's probably a male predator. Domestic minor sex trafficking is any kid protected by American law. And they're not child prostitutes, they're being raped for profit. We identify someone as a prostitute, we are identifying who they are, not what's been forced upon them. Our kids, tragically, are targets in this industry. Dear friend of mine, when she was 8 years old, she was sold by her mom for the first time, traded for heroin when she was 8 years old. Her statement is this: you don't just walk away from this. You don't ask for this. And see, it's fascinating because there's three primary big picture risk factors that impact our kids in particular. They're the societal factors, the environmental, and individual. So in January, I was at North Kansas City High School. So the kids that I was dealing with, they were from that part of the city. Their societal, environmental, individual risk factors look different than the kids in Otis, Kansas. But there's a common denominator. I got done with the high school assembly, and a young girl, she came storming down the steps, and you could hear her clomping. So have you ever encountered a person where, like, they're around you and they're just attempting to keep their emotions in check? She was ticked at me at the end of an assembly. I mean, she's coming at me. I mean, she got the finger pointing. She's fighting, and I'm all like, what was this gonna happen? And she comes bombing down. She gets in my space, and she says to me, "Where were you when I was in the 7th grade?" And she unpacks the tragic story of her best friend who in 7th grade got caught up in a really vicious cocktail of teenage life, looking for a friend, needing attention. Thought she found it in a young 14-year-old boy. The long story short, because I don't have time today, is he ended up being a 58-year-old male sexual predator who harmed her in person physically, and that happened during the summer of 7th and 8th grade, 2 weeks into 8th grade. As this girl who was standing in front of me has gone through the gamut of emotions, being ticked at me, to then despair, to then big tears coming down her face in the front of this auditorium, and says, my friend sent me a text message and says, "Get over here right now." And she says, I went to her apartment. And the reason that she had texted this girl is because she wanted to be found. She had taken her own life, hung herself in her closet. 8th grade kid, you really got to want to die to hang yourself in a closet. And this girl began to weep, and then she went into guilt and despair. She said, if I wish I had known what you just taught us, because maybe I could have kept my friend from dying. We do student surveys at the end of student presentations to over 36,000 kids, and they tell us their vulnerabilities. It's a really short survey. It's in cooperation developed with the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And so right now, we're talking 1st grade through 12th grade. The percentages change, but in that big picture, 26% of the kids said, I've either met a complete stranger in person, I first met online, and or I'm active in sending nudes of myself through social media. So all we focus on are 3 words: the exploitation of vulnerability. And 100% of the kids that we work with who are victims of domestic minor sex trafficking between the ages of 8 and 17 that we've worked with as an organization, 100% of them said that their initial grooming process happened through social media. So we decided as an organization that those are the issues we're going to address to stay way out ahead. So at the high school where I was at, so North Kansas City High School, it wasn't the entire school. It was a group of students in some classes. 52% of the kids in that environment filled out that survey, said, we've engaged in those activities. I drove from there, and 2 hours later, 2.5 hours later, I was standing in Hume, Missouri. Anybody ever know where Hume, Missouri is? Population 332. You've never been to Hume, Missouri? Okay, so long story short, those kids in that community, okay, so the risk factors of societal, environmental, and individual completely different from North Kansas City and Hume, Missouri. So you know where Hume is. It's kind of down close to Pleasanton, Lacine, Mound City, okay, and then go about 30 miles into Missouri. That's where Hume is. 48% of the kids in that school setting in grades 5 through 12 filled out the survey to indicate the same thing. So what's the common denominator? So the common denominator is social media. So tonight I'm going to tell a lot more stories more in depth. But who's more vulnerable in our lives than our kids when they get that device? These kids these days. And then on the other hand, I got to get my kid a cell phone to keep them safe. Because, you know, they're going to be getting off the bus going from cross country to band, and I got to know where they're at during the day, and what we're not thinking. So hello, right? And there's a big window we need to understand. So that's our perspective. These kids these days, I'm not buying that, because kids are just kind of following through with what we do in our vulnerabilities, and then we say, okay, got to keep our kids safe, and the kid is saying, I got to have this phone to stay in touch with my friend. And one of the introductory apps is Snapchat. So every kid's got Snapchat. It's hard to find a kid on social media who's not using Snapchat. The problem with Snapchat, it's the #1 sexting app on the planet next to WhatsApp. So a young boy told me last year, he was 14, and said, Mr. Tuttle, I need to talk to you. And you know, when you work with kids this much, you just know, right? You just know. And I said, dude, time out. I'm a mandated reporter, so you need to think real careful about what's about to come out of your mouth. And he said this, I don't care, I need freedom. Oh. So he begins to unpack how he's bringing freshman girls home from the high school to his apartment, and he is showing them pornography. There's 3 words I want you to remember. It's the exploitation of vulnerability. So the girls have vulnerabilities. So for whatever their reasons were, they're willing to go to his house and let him do these things to them. What he's not telling me, he reveals to me, is he's recording them acting these porn actions out on him. He's recording it and selling it on Snapchat for Snapcash, $5 a download. I now, by federal law, have a child pornographer on my hands. I have multiple victims on my hands. I've got a big hot mess on my hands. I'm going, dude, you just ruined my day. And for the next 3 weeks, right? Law enforcement's not my lane, but grateful for amazing relationships with law enforcement in that area that stepped in. I am not a trauma-informed counselor, but we had a whole hot mess of people who needed trauma-informed counseling. Wonderful to have all those people to work with. And on the network goes, which is why this coalition exists. When we have our kids in trouble, you need to be reaching out to them. Bad kid. I don't believe there are bad kids. I think they could be products of their environment. Because the deep dive story on that boy, mom and dad had just divorced. It had been about 6 months. The reason for the divorce was dad had a porn addiction that he started as a young boy. Now he's living with a single mom. He didn't tell anybody except me. That thing got passed on. He had put a tracking device on his mom's phone so he knew where she was at all times, so she couldn't come home early when he's got girls home from school. See, not bad kid, product of his environment. So he was introduced to porn at the age of 4. He's now 14. He has 10 years of this training. So now he's gone to this place of, and guess what happened? He's selling videos to men, adult men, looking to then exploit some of the girls that he was selling. You know what it's called? It's called domestic minor sex trafficking. These girls are being harmed, they're being sold. Bad kid, no. The challenge is this. We've got to quit doing this and understand there's a big picture. What we have to communicate to our students, and I had till 12:30, so I have 2 minutes left. We've got to help our kids understand that when they're online doing this, there's a big window of predators out there looking. And one of the things I must encourage you to understand is this. It is incumbent on us to develop communities of trusted adults around our students. whether that's through our schools, through the faith community, through law enforcement, through our medical professionals, anything and everything we can do to lessen the vulnerabilities in our kids. It is incumbent upon us to do exactly that. Because here's the thing, our kids, they're facing issues of loneliness and isolation like they've never faced before. We know the level of depression amongst American teens and tweens has gone up 40% in the last 6 years, and the level of suicide has gone up 20%. I am talking to kids in second grade who aren't using the words, but everything they're talking about is they have found themselves in a controlling relationship online or in person. And you know what's happening? Our kids are doing this. And it starts at a superficial level. My mom's stupid. I hate algebra. School lunch is disgusting. Boom, mic drop. Can't wait to see who's going to respond to that. And if a lot of people like it and share it, my status online goes really high. If not very many people like it, I'm kind of depressed for the rest of the day. You know where they're learning that behavior? From us. But it goes deeper, because now what's happening is kids are talking about how they're feeling lonely and they feel isolated and they feel separate from their community for whatever reason. They talk about being depressed and they talk about suicide ideation. So when a little girl in a rural community came to me and said, Mr. Tuttle, can you please give me one reason why I should keep living at the end of an assembly? And I've never met this girl, never seen her in my life. And you unpack how she had gotten into a controlling relationship in 4th grade. When a 5th grade boy said, if you don't take all your clothes off and send me a hot pic of you, I'm going to kill myself. She's 4th grade. No trusted adults involved in that process. Now she stands in front of me in 7th grade and says, why should I keep living? And she rolls up her sleeves and shows me all the cut marks on her arms, because it was the only level of pain that she could control. And you know where she learned how to cut? On social media. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't do this any longer. Our kids are doing this every time they're on social media, and what we have to understand is this, is that there's a big window. And tragically, there are people that want to harm kids, and it is incumbent on us to keep them safer. So that was my 20 minutes. And I thank you for everything you're doing. Anything and everything you can do to lessen the vulnerability in a kid, to keep them from being further exploited, is helping. So what are the 3 words I want you to remember? They're this: exploitation of vulnerability. That's all I want you to take out of the room today. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. That's pretty powerful. And that was just a little bit of what Russ knows, what he's understood, what he's been doing to stop trafficking. I think everybody in here would agree that our youth are important. What I have found out is we believe that our youth are important. Oftentimes we don't realize how vulnerable our youth are. And if we're going to be successful in this war to eradicate human trafficking, we're going to have to get smarter than we have been. Some of you in here already know about this. What I've found vastly going through the community and around the state and other places is that people do not understand the inherent dangers that are before our youth every single day. And when we get that awareness, when we get that eye-opening aha moment, it's very devastating, it's very confusing. What do we do about this? I know Russ will say you don't throw your cell phones away, you don't turn your computer off. You have to know how to manage and understand the nefarious activities that are occurring out there that are using this amazing miracle of technology to steal and destroy and to kill our future. And we happen to be some of those folks in this community that are on the front lines of this to be able to get a better understanding so that we can fight this well. So Russ, thank you so much. I know there's more tonight. There's going to be more for those that have signed up. We're going to have you back for more in our community to be able to unpack this so you really get into the weeds of this to know what to do about it. So thank you all for being here for this. This ends the official presentation of Safe Streets today. If you are staying now for your sector meetings, go ahead and remain in this room. Others are dismissed. Sector leaders, for your debrief, let's go ahead and meet in the East Gallery now. Thank you for being here.